And we're good to go. Right. Yep. It looks like we're all set. Wonderful. Hi there. I'm Dr. Ali. Sorry about the delay. Sooner or later we'll get the tech issues sorted, but I wanted to use this rather than my phone, and we'll see how we get on. Bear with me. Wonderful. So, the thyroid-adrenal trap, why you're wired and tired but not getting better. Are you feeling exhausted morning and night and then suddenly feeling wired? Feeling like no matter how much you sleep, you just can't get into a good rhythm and you're waking up unrefreshed. You might just be caught in the thyroid-adrenal trap. So let's unravel it together. Welcome to Beyond the Prescription. I'm Dr. Alison Grimston, Head of Women's Health at Dr. Finley's private practice. I'm a former NHS GP and a functional medicine doctor now, helping women to break free from the exhaustion stress cycle that sabotages their hormones and well-being. Let's start with the physiology behind the exhaustion, the cortisol thyroid feedback loop. The HPA axis, which is your hypothalamus in the brain, pituitary at the front of the brain, really just behind your third eye, and the adrenal glands, this axis regulates your stress response. When you're under chronic stress, and so many of us are these days, oops, there goes my whoop. So many of us are under chronic stress these days. Your adrenals produce cortisol in unpredictable spiking patterns like a roller coaster. This constant stimulation of your stress system sends the body into survival mode. Now, here's the kicker. Cortisol directly impacts thyroid function. Yeah. So if you've got an underactive thyroid like me, part of your recovery needs to be not only managing the stresses you're experiencing, so there are some that we can impact and some we can't, but also managing your response to stress. So how does cortisol impact your thyroid function? That seems a bit strange. They're two separate organs, aren't they? And they're far from each other. Here's your thyroid. The adrenals are just the size of a walnut and they're on the top of your kidneys, so quite far apart. So how does cortisol affect it? First of all, it suppresses TSH production from the pituitary. So the way the hormones work, the thyroid stimulating hormone is released from the pituitary as a response to thyrotrophin, which is thyroid TSH stimulating hormone from the hypothalamus. But that aside, cortisol suppresses TSH production from the pituitary. So even though your thyroid might be underperforming, instead of being told to ramp it up by the TSH, the signal to ramp it up never gets sent. Cortisol also inhibits that all-important conversion that I told you about last time of T4 into active T3, the hormone your cells actually use. Instead, it diverts T4 into reverse T3, a kind of metabolic brake that blocks your cells from using T3. This creates a scenario where your thyroid levels can look normal on labs, but your tissues are actually starved of active thyroid hormone. So imagine your thyroid is speaking to your body through a gentle whisper, but cortisol turns on a blaring radio that drowns it out. Your cells can't hear that whisper anymore. So even though the hormone is technically there, your body can't use it. So the next thing we're going to talk about is why adrenal dysfunction shows up first. Most conventional doctors start with TSH when evaluating the thyroid. And in the NHS, that's all they're allowed to test. I've tried, you have to say, to ask for free T3, you have to say you're an endocrinologist. Now, I may be a thyroid specialist in functional medicine terms, but I'm not an endocrinologist. But here's what most people don't realize. The TSH is a lagging indicator. In the early stages of dysregulations, your adrenals compensate for everything. You may feel tired but wired, so you're sort of feeling a little bit drained, but you're wired and on edge and you feel like you can keep doing, you're exhausted and yet unable to rest. And you're in that state that many of us are as professionals in whatever role you have. You feel like you've got to keep going. A gentleman I spoke to yesterday in my clinic with underactive thyroid, he was saying, well, I don't have time to rest, but you must. But you feel exhausted and yet unable to rest. You're wired and tired because cortisol is doing all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. So when we get the adrenal stress index, that beautiful curve that I use in my clinic, looking at cortisol throughout the day, the cortisol is managing to keep up. In fact, it may be overproducing. And your TSH won't necessarily rise yet, even if you're needing a little bit more T4. So this means you can feel hypothyroid, you can feel cold, sluggish, depressed, gaining weight, constipation, heavy periods if you're a woman of childbearing age, while your TSH is still normal. And this happens so often. The issue isn't your thyroid alone. It's in the communication network between your brain, adrenals, and thyroid. Just checking with my assistant that I am live. So it's all of this together. So by the time your TSH finally flags as abnormal, you've often been living in burnout for months, if not years. That was the case with me when my TSH showed up as abnormal. And this is why so many women, especially because it's mainly women who get underactive thyroid, are dismissed with phrases like your labs are normal, but they feel anything but. And I know I've said it myself to patients in the NHS where all we're taught is to do the TSH, and there are so many other things that there's so many things that I'm having to I've lost my thread. Sorry about that. So as a doctor, as a GP with 10-minute appointments, we're having to manage gynecological cancer and COPD and somebody who's stressed. So we have to become a specialist in everything, which is a bit impossible. So we do have to be on the surface. But in my private clinic, where I can act fully in my functional medicine doctor role, I can go deep and really go in depth into the thyroid hormone tests, which is brilliant, and look at the adrenals properly. So let's look at another point: sleep, stress, and hormone resistance. You may have heard of insulin resistance, but other hormones have receptor resistance as well. So let's talk about why you can take thyroid hormone, like T4, and still not feel any better. So sleep and stress are deeply entwined. Poor sleep raises your cortisol levels and worsens adrenal imbalance. Chronic stress leads to hormone receptor resistance. So that's when your cells literally become desensitized to the hormones you're producing or supplementing. So, for example, we've talked about insulin resistance in the past. And I was talking about just now about the whisper from your TSH being drowned out. The same thing happens with hormone receptors on the cells. If they are bombarded with too much of the hormone, they become numb to it. It's a bit like kids saying, "Mum, mum, mum, mum." You sort of drown it out eventually. It's like having the right key, the thyroid hormone, but the lock, the receptor, is jammed. What this means for you is that you might be doing everything right, taking levothyroxine or even body identical thyroid hormone, and yet still struggle with brain fog, hair loss, and fatigue. Until you address the stress root cause, hormone therapy will only take you part of the way. And the stress root cause may be in your diet. So it may be that you're eating gluten. It may be in your toothpaste because you haven't switched to fluoride-free toothpaste yet. There are so many variables, which is why I recommend working closely with a functional medicine doctor practitioner like myself, or joining my thyroid hormone when I release my thyroid program when I release it later this year. Hormone healing isn't just about replacing what's missing, it's about making sure your body can recognize and respond to those hormones. So let's look at real recovery steps. You don't have to stay stuck in this loop. Here's how to start resetting your stress thyroid system. First of all, let's talk adaptogens. Adaptogens are gentle herbs like ashwagandha and rhodiola. Those are two particular ones that are brilliant. These help modulate cortisol. They're neither suppressing nor overstimulating it. Think of them as nature's recalibrators. Your body responds to ashwagandha or rhodiola by resetting. So you can give ashwagandha if your adrenal glands are overproducing cortisol or underproducing. It will help. It's amazing. Then let's talk nutrients and diets. So there are many cofactors for adrenal and thyroid function, but here are just some. So you need magnesium for calming the nervous system. It's really important for every cell of your body. B vitamins, especially B5, B6, and B12. But be careful with B6. We are now seeing some severe effects from B6 toxicity because so many supplements contain B6, and people are using lots of different supplements for different elements of their healthcare plan. So be cautious with B6, but B5 and B12. And then healthy fats help to stabilize blood sugar and support hormone synthesis. So many of these hormones, all your sex hormones, even thyroid hormones, they need cholesterol. So you don't want your cholesterol in your boots. You don't want it as low as people say, as cardiologists specifically say. Another one really important for adrenal function is vitamin C. The adrenal glands, despite being tiny, the size of a walnut, they eat up more vitamin C than any other organ in the body. Then a whole foods anti-inflammatory diet with stable blood sugar is key. So let's look at daily rhythms. We need you to have consistent sleep-wake times even on weekends. We do need you to recover your sleep, and I do recommend as part of my programs a sleep vacation, which is a 3-day weekend where you're in bed without any electronics for 12 hours a night. I know that seems far-fetched, doesn't it? But it will do a world of good for your sleep pattern. But that's separate. That's a reset. That's part of my 60 days to menopause relief, hormone relief program. Instead, we want you to have a consistent sleep-wake time. You need to aim at having 7, 8, 9 hours sleep. Everybody's different. Some people need 12, especially when they're going through a chronic fatigue condition like long COVID, chronic Lyme disease, and ME. But and you can, using that sleep vacation I told you about, that's how you can tell what level of sleep you need once you've replenished missing sleep. So we do get a sleep deficit that can build up, and you want to stop that and get to bed on time. So you need this consistent sleep-wake time. You need morning light exposure to anchor your circadian rhythm. So I want you to get out, even if it's just standing outside at your door, getting daylight that's not through glass. If you have to open your window wide enough for you to see the daylight, not through the glass. It needs to be direct daylight, ideally, because the glass is filtering out some of those rays. And that morning light exposure switches on your cortisol for the day, because we have a diurnal rhythm in cortisol. We have high cortisol first thing in the morning, and it sinks down to being low to allow us to get off to sleep. So we want that morning light exposure. That also incidentally helps your melatonin. So it helps reset your melatonin for the following evening. So it's a brilliant practice. And I want you to be going to bed ideally between 9:30 and 11. It's been shown that the hours of sleep before midnight are worth much more than the hours of sleep after midnight in terms of your regeneration. Sleep is essential for your body's regeneration. And then meal timing. You need meal timing that supports balanced energy throughout the day. If you are in a state of adrenal fatigue, then intermittent fasting isn't for you at the moment. It often doesn't suit women with hormone issues, PMS, and menopause as well. But time-restricted eating, which is a less severe intermittent fasting, is excellent. And that's where you're eating within a 12-hour window. So you stop eating 7 in the evening and you start eating after 7 in the morning. So that is a good thing. But regular meals, if you are having this issue of adrenal support issues. And the important thing, one of the most important things, is to stop eating at least 2, preferably 3 hours before your bedtime. So no bedtime snacks, no milky drinks before bed. Even though these can help you get off to sleep, they will switch on your insulin, which switches off your growth hormone overnight. And then you've got things out of balance overnight, less refreshed sleep. You're putting on fat instead of muscle overnight. So consistency with your sleep-wake time helps tell your adrenals, we're safe now. You don't need to stay in overdrive. It helps to switch them off and let them rest. And also boundaries and lifestyle detox. I want you to set limits around work and screen time. Build a buffer before bedtime. No scrolling. Don't look at your phone before bed. Create non-negotiable decompression habits such as a walk, a bath, or a journaling practice, or reading a paper book that doesn't have a screen. And practice saying no more often to say yes to your health. You can't supplement your way out of a chaotic life. Healing requires changing your rhythm. So now I'm going to talk about a case study. So I had a patient in her early 40s, and she had chronic burnout. She'd been on thyroid meds for a year with no symptomatic improvement. So she burnt out. She was a busy professional. She was working. When you're trained professionally or in business or anywhere where you've got a really good work ethic, you'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing yourself, and often at the expense of your health and your family relationships as well, to be honest. I've been there when I was 38. So she'd been on her thyroid meds, just levothyroxine, so the standard allopathic medicine approach to thyroid issues, for a year with no symptomatic improvement. When we investigated her adrenals using the Dutch Plus test, so we were looking at the adrenals, including the cortisol awakening response, and at the same time we were able to analyze her sex hormones and sex hormone metabolisms, we saw a flattened cortisol curve, no cortisol awakening response. After resetting her rhythms, introducing adaptogens, adjusting her diet so that she was gluten-free to support the thyroid, fluoride-free toothpaste, filtering all water, focusing on sleep hygiene with one of my 3-day sleep vacations and then a regular sleep pattern. We rebalanced her cortisol in 8 weeks, and her T3 started working again. So it's not about supplementing with T3 necessarily. Lots of people say, I need T3 instead of T4. It's not that. You need to look at how you're converting your T4 to T3. So it's all of the things you do to support your thyroid and your body, because it's the peripheral tissues that do that conversion. She regained energy and clarity without increasing her thyroid dose. So this was how we helped turn her health around, and she felt so much better. She would wake up in the morning and take a deep breath and be able to face the day and enjoy the day again. She wasn't waking up exhausted. Her sleep quality improved, as shown on her apps. So she was using a Whoop, which is my favorite app. It shows you much more than the Oura Ring, but both are excellent. And of course, those of you with an Apple Watch or something like that, no need to buy a new thing. That will tell you a lot of what you need to know about your heart rate variability and your sleep quality and your deep and REM and sleep. So she was much better, even that quickly. And then when we repeated her Dutch Plus test, things were definitely improving, and her cortisol curve was getting back into the normal range. Her DHEA had been replenished. So if this is resonating with you, Just type in the comments and let me know, and I'll share a free guide to help you to reset your cortisol thyroid connection. And I'd love you to let me know. Are you feeling wired in the day and exhausted at night? Or are you actually feeling exhausted during the day and then suddenly get a second wind and wired at night, which was what was happening to me when I was burning out? Very common. And we need to do things to boost the cortisol in the morning and reduce the cortisol at night. So support that natural cortisol curve, which can then support your thyroid and all of those thyroid supporting lifestyle changes that I've talked about. So if you're ready for that guided support and not just symptom masking, my one-to-one hormone review offers deep adrenal and thyroid coaching. So do DM me or contact Dr. Finley's private practice to find out how to get started with that. So thank you for spending some of Friday morning with me on Beyond the Prescription. If this helped you to feel seen, please share it with a friend. I've streamed it to YouTube this time at last. And next week, we're going to go deeper into thyroid and autoimmunity, what they don't test for, but you really need to know. Until then, here's to feeling like yourself again. Have a beautiful day and a great weekend.